Thank you for that introduction, Master Footman. Today I'd like to go over the new Igniter 2 board. Now, unlike other releases, which were just firmware updates on top of an existing design, Igniter 2 is a brand new hardware, and I'd like to go over that today. So first, let's go about comparing it with the previous versions. So here at the top, you can see the original Igniter and the true color, which is everything you need to install it. Then the middle is the Igniter Mini with the true drive still attached. Again, that's everything you'd need. And finally, we have the Igniter 2 down here at the bottom. This also has the true drive attached. So this is everything you would need to install this board. Now, like the Igniter Mini, the Igniter 2 is a 3.7 volt board, so it requires only a single battery, whereas this required 7.4 volts. So this is much more similar to the Mini in that it has the true drive, requires 3.7, but there's other differences. But first, let's go over the sizing of all three of these boards. So let's use my digital calipers here. And here, let's check the width of the Igniter with the true color. That's showing about 3.68 inches. So that's pretty long. Now let's go over the Igniter Mini. It should be like 2.45 or something. 2.44 it's showing. I just knocked it. It was showing 2.44 basically. And now let's go over the Igniter 2. And you can see this is even only showing 2.06, but it's actually more like 2.07. Again, these calipers aren't the greatest. There's 2.069, which is about right, 2.07. So that's a lot less length. And you can, again, like the Igniter Mini, you can break this off, and then you'll have a board length of only 1.75. And this tiny little true drive, you could just stick right across there, no problem. Now let's also go over the widths, because the widths have also changed. So for the original Igniter, it's something about 0.98, and we'll check that. 0.972 it's showing, it's about 0.98. This is about 0.92, and that's about what it's showing, 0.92. And now let's check the Igniter 2, and that is only 0.85. It's even showing 0.84. It's about 0.85. So it's much skinnier, actually. That width makes a big difference. And you may say, like, how much difference does it make? Well, since I'm a visual person, I'd like to really show you. So, for instance, here is a hilt that a lot of people are familiar with. This is the Parks Obi-Wan. It is a 2012 aluminum edition, and I'm doing my install to it. Unlike other versions, unlike other versions of the board, the same hilt, where I had to cut way into here to get the board in the middle. With the Igniter 2, it fits right in the back where it's supposed to, so the pommel caps right over that. And this made the install really easy, because then the battery can fit right in here, inside the 7/8 inch tube. It just fits directly in it. That's what it's sort of made for. So this makes the install much easier. I'll go over that one in more details later. And now another hilt that you guys may be familiar with is Duke hilt, also from Parks. Here's the one I have exactly in its condition it was shipped to me. And so with the Igniter Mini, even there's no way for this to fit inside here. You can see it gets stuck, and it fits inside this first lip, but here you can see the lip where it steps down, and there's just no way for it to fit there without machining this, which is really going to be cumbersome and tough since this is stainless steel. However, if we just take our Igniter 2, you can see that slides in no problem, just slides all the way in. And what's great about that is that by pulling off the true drive and putting it on top here and sliding this in, you can slide it all the way up here, have room for your heatsink, and then still have room for, down here for I haven't measured, maybe an 18650 will fit, at least an 18500 will fit. So it's going to make that install way easier, and you're going to get a full featured board in a pretty easy install there. And so now that I've done the comparison between the three boards, I'm going to zoom in and show some of the new hardware similarities and changes of the Igniter 2, focusing mostly on the Igniter Mini at this point. So let's zoom it in and check those out. Okay. Now that we're zoomed in, let's go over the similarities and differences of the Igniter Mini with the Igniter 2. So the layout is pretty similar to the Igniter Mini, with the true drive here on the right, the switch pads here. This is the programming pads for me, and then the accent pads down here. That's all pretty similar. Of course, the power, and then the two speakers, though they were aligned this way on the other board, but that's pretty similar. But now let's go over what's really different. Okay, so the first thing that you'll notice that's clearly different is there's no SD card holder. And that's because I moved it to the back. And I did that for two reasons. The first reason is that it's spring-loaded. So now, you can insert your SD card like this, snaps, unsnap it, and then pull it out. And that makes it just a lot easier to get to the card if the board is sort of down in the hilt behind a speaker in front of it, and you have to pull that and reach down in there. It's just a lot easier to get the card out, so I did that. And the other reason I wanted to put the holder on the bottom is because you can see all these components here on the bottom of the board. They're all aligned within the width of this SD card holder. In this way, any 3D printed chassis or anything that's ever made for this board can have a slight indent on the floor, and then when this card slides in, no components would ever rub on the chassis at all. So I think that'll really prevent any components from ever getting damaged at all. Even though that wasn't really a big problem before, this will just make sure it's perfect. Now the other difference is, and you may notice it, that this area looks surprisingly familiar, and it should, because this is actually basically the max amp. So the Igniter 2 now has the max amp integrated, so you're going to get extremely loud volume, very similar to the original Igniter, but you only need a 3.7 volt. And what's great is too, if you liked that 2 setup before where you could use 2 speakers using a max amp, that is still possible. And in fact, it's easier because now there are 2, albeit very small pads here, but these pads actually you can hook up to the max amp, so you don't have to solder to components on the board. And that allows the 2-speaker setup to be a lot easier. And then another difference, which I kind of glossed over, but the remaining accent pads, the small ones here, at least they're on the outside of the board, as opposed to being inside the middle of the back of the board on the Igniter Mini. So if you want to use all 8 accent pads, it's easier than it was before. And finally, the most important change, which isn't noticeable, but the Igniter 2 comes equipped with a 6 degrees of freedom swing sensor. Basically what that is a 3-axis gyro and accelerometer combined. And what this allows is for some amazing swing clash detections, and we will be going over that in another video.